Hello friends, welcome to Premier UPSC IS. So continuing with the economy lectures, today we are going to cover the topics from economic planning to the Niti Aayog and the finance commissions. Okay, coming to economic planning, origin and expansion of planning. In order to achieve faster economic progress, planning was considered as an effective method as it has been tried by different countries at different times and at different levels. We may see them as under one, regional planning. Planning for the first time was used in the context of regional development. For example, first instance of regional planning can be seen in the Tennessee Valley Authority, USA, 1916. It was set up with intent to plan for large-scale rehabilitation in southeastern USA, covering parts of 7 states. The primary of the TVA, that is Tennessee Valley Authority, planning was to suggest measures for soil conservation, flood, flood control, and providing electricity. It was also involved in many related activities such as industrial development, town planning, construction of road and rail, encouraging sound agricultural practices, forestry, wildlife conservation, and malaria control in the defined region. The United States' experience of regional planning became such a success in realizing its well-defined goals that it emerged as a role model. This US model of regional planning served as a template to many countries around the world in the coming decades. The Damodar Valley Corporation (DVC) in India 1948, the Volta River Project in Ghana 1966, etc. were inspired from the TVA. National planning. Joseph Stalin announced its policy of central planning for the Soviet Union after the pace of industrialization in USSR did not yield satisfactory results in 1928. First instance of national planning was witnessed when the Soviet Union went for its 5-year plan for the period 1928 to 33. The process of rapid industrialization was initiated by the introduction of economic planning at the national level, along with the famous Soviet slogan, Great Leap Forward. In the first Soviet 5-year plan, top priority was accorded to heavy industries and it was given more priority than the light industry. And consumer goods sector was treated as residual sector or it received least priority. A similar sort of emphasis can be seen in the planning process during the second 5-year plan. After the Second World War, the Soviet model of economic planning got spread to the East European countries and even China, where one can witness the purest form of such planning. Types of planning. 1. Imperative planning. This process of planning is followed by the state economies. Two main variants of such imperative planning are 1. Socialist system, 2. Communist system. In socialist system, in which all the economic decisions are taken by the state and the state also has the collective ownership of resources, except labor. Communist system in which all resources were to be owned and utilized by the state including labor too, example China in the past. 2. Indicative planning. Idea of planning that was commenced by Soviet planning gained attention from the democratic world almost 2 decades later. These economies, these economies too started with process of national planning. The nature of their planning was to be different from the command economies, as they were neither the state economies nor the communist political systems, but they were mixed economies. Planning in India. Planning in India, the Visvesvaraya Plan. First blueprint of Indian planning was proposed by the popular civil engineer and ex-Diwan of Mysore state M. Visvesvaraya in his book The Planned Economy of India, published in the year 1934. His ideas of state planning included an exercise in democratic capitalism similar to the USA, emphasis on industrialization, a shift of labor from the agrarian setup to the industries, and targeting to double national income in 1 decade. Visvesvaraya's plan aroused an urge for national planning among the educated citizens of the country. The FICCI proposal, Federation of the Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, the leading organization of Indian capitalists in 1934, recommended a serious need of national planning. President of the FICCI N.R. Sarkar stated that the days of undiluted laissez-faire were gone forever, and for a backward country like India, a comprehensive plan for the economic development covering the whole gamut of economic activities was necessary. The Congress plan. Gandhians, including Mahatma Gandhi and some businessmen, were opposed to commit the party to centralize the state planning. Subhash Chandra Bose set up the National Planning Committee in October 1938 under the chairmanship of J.L. Nehru to work out concrete programs for development encompassing all major areas of the economy. Basically, the NPC, that is National Planning Committee, set up by Subhash Chandra Bose, renowned members were like M. Visvesvaraya, G.D. Birla, J.R.D. Tata, and Lala Sriram, and many others, including academicians, technocrats, provincial civil servants, trade unionists, socialists, and communists, etc., were also invited. The 15-member NPC with 29 subcommittees and a total of 350 members produced 29 volumes of recommendations. Some of the important developments after the NPC set up by Subhash Chandra Bose was set up which prepared a foundation for the coordinated planning in independent India are given below. 1. Post-war Reconstruction Committee. 2. Consultative Committee of Economists think tank under the chairmanship of Ramaswamy Mudaliar. Planning and Development Department Advisory Planning Board to review the planning. The Bombay Plan, published in 1944 to 45. Bombay Plan was the popular title of a plan of economic development for India, which was prepared by a cross section of India's leading capitalists. The eight capitalists involved in this plan were J.R.D. Tata, G.D. Birla, Purushottam Das Thakur Das, Lala Sriram, Kastur Bhai Lal Bhai, A.D. Shroff, Avdeshir Dalal, and John Mathai. The popular sentiments regarding the need of planning and crisscross of memberships between the NPC and the Bombay Plan Club made possible some clear-cut agreements between these two major plans, which ultimately went to mold the very shape of the Indian economy after independence. Some of the important agreements are a basic agreement on the issue of agrarian restructuring, zamindari abolition, agreement on rapid industrialization. The Bombay Plan had allocated 35% of its total plan outlay on the basic industries. The NPC and the Bombay Plan both were in favor of a simultaneous development of the essential consumer goods industries but as a low key affair, promoting the medium scale, small scale, and cottage industries. Both the plans wanted the state to play an active role in the economy through planning, controlling, and overseeing the different areas of the economy. Large scale measures for social welfare. The Gandhian Plan. Espousing the spirit of the Gandhian economic thinking, Sriman Narayan Agarwal formulated this plan in 1944. This plan laid more emphasis on agriculture. This plan advocated for a decentralized economic structure for India with self-contained villages. The People's Plan. In 1945, yet another plan was formulated by the radical humanist leader M.N. Roy, chairman of the post-war Reconstruction Committee of the Indian Trade Union. People's Plan advocated the need of providing the people with the basic necessities of life and was based on Marxist socialism. Agricultural and industrial sectors both were equally highlighted by the plan. Socialist leanings in Indian planning, many is attributed to this plan. The Sarvodaya Plan. The famous socialist leader Jayaprakash Narayan came up with the Sarvodaya Plan in January 1950. Essence of the plan was to inculcate 1. The Gandhian techniques of constructive works by the community of and trusteeship. The Sarvodaya concept of Acharya Vinoba Bhave, who was an eminent Gandhian. This plan emphasized on agriculture, agri-based small and cottage industries, self-reliance, which is in line with the Gandhian thoughts. Plan advocated land reforms, self-dependent villages, and decentralized participatory form of planning and economic progress, and no dependence on foreign capital and technology. Some of the ideas of the Sarvodaya plan found their way into five-year plans, some area-wise reports. Maybe due to the influence of USSR, the idea for the need of a planned development of India became more and more popular in 1940s. This promoted the government of India to take some planned actions in this direction, owing to the popular pressure. There were several area-specific reports being published in 1940s. 1. Gadget Report on Rural Credit, Keraghat Report on Agricultural Development, Krishnamachari Report on Agricultural Prices, Saraya Report on Cooperatives, a series of reports on irrigation, groundwater, canal, etc. All these reports, though prepared with great care and due scholarship, the government had hardly any zeal to implement plans on their findings. When the planning started covering all these areas of concerns, independent India was greatly benefited. The plans prepared by the Government of India, the Bombay Plan, and other above discussed plans, except the NPC and the Sarvodaya Plan, suffered from serious limitations. When they were prepared, it was known that transfer of power was to take place quite soon, but the exact form of the future government was not known. The plans consisted largely of proposals of experts which were not effectively coordinated. They had no social philosophy behind them. With the advent of independence, they became inadequate, though the thinking that had taken place on planning generally, and its techniques proved useful for the future. Major objectives of planning: reviewing the entire situation in the light of social philosophy, evolved over decades. The Constituent Assembly came to the conclusion that to guide this revolution of rising expectations into constructive channels, India should make determined efforts through 1. Carefully planned large scale social and economic development, and the application of modern scientific and technological improvements to bring about a rapid and appreciable rise in the standard of living of the people with the maximum measure of social justice attainable. Together, it was a path for India towards becoming a welfare state. Three important constitutional provisions pertaining to the objectives of planning in the country are: 1. Economic and social planning is a concurrent subject. 2. The Constitution includes provisions for promoting cooperation on a voluntary basis between the Union and the states, thus avoiding the rigidities inherent in federal constitutions like Articles 249, 252, 57, 258, 258A, and 312. In other words, the objective is cooperative federalism. 3. The Constitution also enlists the broad outline for pattern of the welfare state envisaged and the fundamental principles on which it should rest. 3. The government resolution announcing the setting up of the Planning Commission, March 1950, started with a reference to the constitutional provisions bearing on the socio-economic objectives of the Constitution. The fundamental rights and the directive principles of the Constitution assure every citizen, among other things, adequate means of livelihood, opportunities for employment, and a socio-economic order based on justice and equality. Thus, the basic objectives of planning were already given in the provisions of the Constitution of India. These were emphatically stated in the first five-year plan itself in the following words. The urge to economic and social change under present conditions comes from the facts of poverty and of inequalities in income, wealth, and opportunity. The elimination of poverty cannot obviously be achieved merely by redistributing existing wealth. Nor can a program aiming only at raising production remove existing inequalities. These two have to be considered together. The above objectives of planning were emphasized in one form or the other in the coming times, also as a second five-year plan. The same objectives were repeated by the sixth five-year plan. It will be highly needful to inquire about the objectives of the planning in the era of the economic reforms initiated in the fiscal 1991-92 as this new economic policy. Finally, a broad consensus looks evolving through the process of planning and crystallizing on the six major objectives of planning in India are as follows. Economic growth, poverty alleviation, employment generation, controlling economic inequality, self reliance, modernization. India did not miss the chance of accepting the importance of modern science and technology. It was essential to adopt the changing dimensions of science and technology since the economy had selected industry as its prime moving force, PMF. The major objectives of the planning in India are both broad and open-ended, therefore doesn't need much changes and modifications in the changing times. When it comes to the composition of the objectives, we may confidently conclude that all the aspirations of the preamble, the fundamental rights, the directive principles of the state policy, and the fundamental duties have got their due place and weightage. Planning Commission. The stage was set for the formal launching of the planning in the country when National Planning Committee published its report in 1949, in which it advocated the need for economic and social planning in the constitution. Planning Commission was set up by the government by cabinet resolution in 1950 without resorting to legislation. Important details regarding the composition legal status are mentioned below. 1. An extra constitutional and non-statutory body. It functioned as an advisory body to the Government of India on an array of issues related to the economic development. Prime Minister acts as its ex officio chairman and with the provision of a deputy chairman whose main function is to coordinate the work of the commission. The Minister of Planning is already an ex officio member of the Planning Commission. Planning Commission has an open provision when its membership is concerned, as many area experts are required by the particular proposed period of planning, other than six Union Cabinet Ministers as its ex officio members and a member secretary. It was an autonomous body and was authorized to form its own views on important issues and place them before the governments. Planning Commission was invariably consulted on changes proposed in social and economic policies. It had a secretariat level like link in the Union Cabinet. The Planning Commission is part of the cabinet organization and the demand for grants for it is included in the budget demand for the cabinet secretariat. Planning Commission was seated at the Yojana Bhavan. The commission has a staff of secretaries and advisors and also a research organization. The Planning Commission was a technical body with experts and professionals coming from an array of specific areas as per the need of planning of the concerned period. The Commission had executive powers. Functions of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will make an assessment of the capital, material, and the human resources of the country, including technical, personal, and investigate the possibilities of augmenting such of those resources as are found to be deficient in relation to the nation's requirements. 2. Formulate a plan for the most effective and the balanced utilization of the country's resources. 3. Based on priorities, it defines the stages of plan execution and proposes the allocation of resources for the due completion of each stage. 4. Indicate the factors which are hindering the economic development and determine the conditions which, in view of the current political and social situation, should be established for the successful execution of the plan. 5. Determine the nature of the machinery which will be necessary for securing the successful implementation of each stage of the plan in all its aspects. With the commencement of the 10th plan, the government handed over two new functions to the Planning Commission in 2002, namely 1. To monitor the plan implementation with special reference to the process of economic reforms with the help of steering committees. 2. To monitor the progress of various central ministries. It should be noted here that for the first time, the Planning Commission went to set the monitorable targets for 10 areas indicating development. The central ministries have been linked to these monitorable targets. The timely performances of the ministries are now monitored by the Planning Commission as per its new function. With the inclusion of the above mentioned two functions in the existing functions, the Planning Commission has emerged as a real super cabinet. Since it is the deputy chairman who officiates the general meetings of the Commission, he has a high level say in articulating the direction and the nature of the economic policies. National Development Council NDC was set up by a resolution issued from the Cabinet Secretariat in August 1952. The first 5 year plan recommended the need of such body and it envisioned a suitable and a very concise observation about it. In a country of the size of India, where the states have under the constitution full autonomy within their own sphere of duties, it is necessary to have a forum such as National Development Council, at which, from time to time, the Prime Minister of India and the Chief Ministers of the states can review the working of the plan of its various aspects. Reasons behind setting up of the National Development Council. The central plans were to be launched in the states and the UTs, and therefore the participation of the state level personnel was necessary, since the Planning Commission did not have its own implementation machinery. Economic planning emerged as a concept from the nations having centralized system. It was necessary to provide the whole planning process a unified outlook when we have the constitutional design of the federal rigidities. It was necessary to provide the whole planning process a unified outlook when we have the constitutional design of the federal rigidities. This purpose is served by the NDC, as it dilutes the autonomous and rigid federal units of the Union of India. Composition of NDC includes all the members of the Planning Commission, Union Cabinet, Chief Ministers of the states, the administrators or lieutenant governments of the Union territories. The PM naturally chairs its meetings. The cabinet resolution by which the NDC was set up defines its functions, which are as under: 1. To consider the proposals formulated for plans at all important stages and accept them. 2. To review the working of the plans from time to time. 3. To consider the important questions of social and economic policy affecting national development. And 4. To recommend measures for the achievement of the aims and targets, improve efficiency and administrative services. NDC also contributed to first 5 year plan. Though first plan of India was launched before the arrival of the NDC, NDC had many meetings before the terminal year of the plan and useful deliberations regarding the implementation of the plan goals. Revival of the NDC's importance was due to three major reasons. One, post 1991, it was an era of the economic reforms which prompted a greater dependence on the private capital. And therefore, it was necessary to allow the states to have greater autonomy in economic matters. It became an economic compulsion after inception of World Trade Organization. Local level planning, a constitutional compulsion with the enactment of the 73rd and the 74th constitutional amendments, and lastly, the compulsion of coalition politics in the formation of the union governments made the center to favor the states. Two plans, the 10th and the 11th, were passed by the NDC with complete support coming from the CMs after a long time. NDC will be able to function on its more original principles as it is believed that the local level planning, that is, the Gram Panchayat and the urban municipalities and corporations, allows more and more scope of planning by the states. Central planning in India. Central planning, the plans which are formulated and financed for the implementation by the central government at the national level are known as central plans. Over the years, the center has launched three such plans, and the governments have maintained continuity in their implementation. The three plans are: 1. 5 year plans, 2. 20-point program, and 3. Member of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme (MPLAD) scheme. An introductory description of these plans is given as follows. First plan, 1951 to 56. Target growth 2.1%, actual growth 3.6%. It was based on Bharat-Domar model. Severe food shortage, influx of refugees from Pakistan, and mounting inflation confronted the country at the onset of the first 5 year plan. The plan focused on agriculture, power, price stability, and transport. Because of good harvest in the last 2 years of the plan, it was regarded as a successful plan primarily. Objectives of the food self-sufficiency, rehabilitation of refugees, and control of prices were more or less achieved. Second plan, 1956 to 61. Target growth for 4.5%, actual growth 4.3%. Overall projections and a strategy of resource allocation to broad sectors as agriculture and industry was based on simple aggregative Harrod-Domar growth model. This model prepared by Professor P.C. Mahalanobis plan is also called as Mahalanobis plan. Second plan was prepared in an atmosphere of economic stability. It was felt that agriculture could be accorded lower priority as the plan focused on rapid industrialization led by heavy and basic industries. It also advocated huge imports through foreign loans. The industrial policy of 1956 was conceived with the goal of economic policy based on establishment of socialistic pattern of society. Acute shortage of forex led to the lowering of the developmental targets. Inflation or price rise was also seen. About 30% made the second five-year plan only a moderately successful one. Third plan from 1961 to 66, target growth 5.6%, actual growth 2.8%. Many planners felt that Indian economy has entered a takeoff stage. Therefore, it aimed was to make India a self-generating and self-reliant economy. Based on the experience of the first and the second five-year plans, agricultural production was seen as a limiting factor in India's economic development. Agriculture was given top priority to support the exports and industry. The plan was thorough failure in reaching the targets due to unforeseen events. Chinese aggression 1962, Indo-Pak War 1965, severe drought 1965 to 66. Due to the above-mentioned conflicts, the approach during the later phase of the third plan was shifted from development to defense and development. Three annual plans, 1966 to 69 plan holiday period. Failure of the third plan, that of the devaluation of rupee to boost export, along with the inflationary recession, led to the postponement of the fourth five-year plan. Three annual plans were introduced incest. Prevailing crisis in agricultural sector coupled with a serious food shortage necessitated the emphasis on agriculture during the annual plans. During this time frame, that is from 1966 to 69, a whole new agricultural strategy was implemented. It involved widespread distribution of high-yield varieties of seeds, extensive use of fertilizers, exploitation of irrigation potential, and soil conservation. The economy observed the shocks generated at the times of third plan during the annual plans. Annual plans paved the path for the planned growth in the future. Fourth plan from 1969 to 74. Target growth 5.7%, actual growth 3.3%. During the Indo-Pak War, many allies refused to supply essential equipments and raw materials, resulting in the twin objectives of grow with stability and progressive achievement of self-reliance for the fourth plan. Main emphasis of the fourth plan was on increasing the growth rate of agriculture in order to enable other sectors to move forward. First 2 years of the fourth five-year plan was witnessed record production of food grains. However, production during the last 3 years did not reach the targets due to poor monsoon. Major targets of the plan also included implementation of family planning programs. Huge influx of refugees from Bangladesh before and after the 1971 Indo-Pak War was an important issue along with the price situation deteriorating to crisis proportions. The plan is considered as a big failure. Fifth plan from 1974 to 79. Target growth 4.4%, actual growth 4.8%. BP Dhar drafted and published the fifth five-year plan in the backdrop of economic crisis arising out of runaway inflation fueled by hike in oil prices and failure of the government takeover of the wholesale trade in wheat. This plan proposed to achieve two main objectives: removal of poverty, called Garibi Hatao, and attainment of self reliance. Key instruments of the plan were better distribution of income, two, promotion of high rate of growth, and significant growth in the domestic rate of savings. Effects of high inflation. Cost calculations for the plan proved to be completely wrong, and the original public sector outlay had to be revised upwards. The emphasis shifted to implementation of the Prime Minister's 20-point program after promulgation of emergency in 1975. Five-year plan was set aside and terminated when Janata Party came to power in 1978. Rolling plan of 1978 and 18. Janta government put forward a plan for 1978 to 1983 which mainly emphasized on employment generation. But this government lasted for only 2 years. This government criticized Nehru model for concentration of power, widening inequality and for mounting poverty. Congress returned to power in the year 1980 and launched a different plan aimed at directly attacking on the problem of poverty by creating conditions of an expanding economy. Sixth plan. Sixth plan 1980 to 85. Target growth 5.2%, actual growth 5.7%. The plan focused on increase in national income, modernization of technology, ensuring continuous decrease in poverty and unemployment through schemes for transferring skills and seats and providing slack season employment, controlling population explosion, etc. Country faced severe famine conditions and agricultural output was less than record output of previous year. Planned targets were mostly achieved during the last 2 years of this planned period. Seventh plan 1985 to 90. Target growth 5.0%, actual growth 6.0. The plan aimed at accelerating food grain production, increasing employment opportunities, and raising the productivity with focus on food, work, and productivity. The plan is regarded as a successful one, as the economy recorded 6% growth rate against the targeted 5%. Eighth plan, target growth 5.6%, actual growth 6.8%. Due to the political uncertainty at the center, eighth plan was postponed by 2 years, worsening balance of payment position, rising debt burden, widening budget deficits, recession in industry, and inflation were the key issues during the launch of the plan. Under the prime ministership of Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao, the plan undertook numerous reformative policy measures. 1. To combat the bad economic situation. 2. To undertake an annual average growth of 5.6%, introduction of fiscal and economic reforms, including liberalization. Eighth plan period witnessed rapid economic growth, high growth of agriculture and allied sector and manufacturing sector, growth in exports and imports, improvement in trade and current account deficit. High growth rate was achieved even though the share of public sector in total investment had declined considerably to about 34%. Ninth plan 1997 to 2002. Target growth 6.5%, actual growth 5.4%. The plan prepared under the United Front government focused on growth with social justice and equality. Ninth plan emphasized more on the private sector, Indian as well as the foreign. State was envisaged to increasingly play the role of facilitator and increasingly involve itself with social sector like education, health, etc., and infrastructure where private sector participation was likely to be limited. Priority was given to agriculture and rural development with a view to generate adequate productive employment and eradicate poverty. 10th plan 2002 to 2007. Target growth 8%, actual growth 7.6%. Recognizing that economic growth can't be the only objective of national plan, 10th plan had set monitorable targets for few key indicators of development besides 8% growth targets. The targets included reduction in gender gaps in literacy and wage rate, reduction in infant and maternal mortality rates, improvement in literacy, access to potable drinking water, and cleaning of major polluted rivers, etc. Governance was considered as a factor of development and agriculture was declared as prime moving force of the economy. States' role in planning was to be increased with the greater involvement of Panchayati Raj institutions. State-wise breakup of targets for growth and social development sought to achieve balanced development of all states. 11th Plan 2007 to 2012. Target growth 9%, actual growth 8%. The plan targets a growth rate of 10% and emphasizes the idea of inclusive growth. In, in the approach paper, the Planning Commission shows its concern regarding realizing the growth targets on account of the compulsions towards the fiscal responsibility and budget management act. In recent times, some aberrations in the economy have started to increase the government concerns in meeting the planned target of 10% growth. The major concerns are a higher inflation, a stronger rupee is making export earnings shrink fast, costlier food grains, costlier oil prices becoming a burden for the national exchequer. 11th plan performance. In July 20, midterm appraisal of the 11th plan was considered and approved by the National Development Council. It consisted of the problems in some selected areas of implementation and identified a set of constraints that would be of relevance for the balance period of the 11th plan and also for the 12th plan. These include inter alia of restoring the dynamism in agriculture, managing India's water resources, problems in achieving power generation targets, issues pertaining to urbanization, and special problems of tribal development. The rate of growth of agriculture did not reach the target of 4% per year. Monthly per capita consumption expenditure was defined by the Planning Commission on the basis of the methodology contained in the report of the expert group on estimation of number and proportion of poor known as Lakdawala Committee report. Planning Commission was estimating poverty line and poverty ratio since 1997. The head count poverty ratio has been estimated. An expert group under the chairmanship of Professor Suresh D. Tendulkar was constituted by the Planning Commission in 2005 to review the methodology of estimation of poverty. It recommended for adoption of the mixed reference period based estimates of consumption expenditure as the basis for the future poverty lines. On the basis of the above methodology, all India rural poverty headcount ratio was estimated at 41.8%, urban poverty headcount ratio at 25.7%, and all India level at 37.2%. Due to the use of different methodologies, Tendulkar Committee's estimates are not strictly comparable to the present official poverty estimates. 12th Plan 2012 to 2017. The theme of the approach of paper to the 12th five-year plan in faster, sustainable and more inclusive growth. The NDC was supposed to give its final nod to the plan in its meeting scheduled on October 22, 2011. The broad approach that must be followed to achieve the stated objectives which are summed up as follows. 1. Growth rate of 9% in targeted for the plan. 2. 4% average growth in agriculture sector. 3. Higher growth in agriculture would not only provide broad-based income benefits to the rural population. 4. But also to help restrain inflationary pressure. Instrumental for promoting inclusiveness in the 11th plan. Plan indicates that the energy needs of rapid growth will pose a major challenge. For the GDP to grow at 9%, commercial energy supplies will have to grow at a rate between 6.5 and 7% per year. Even in the case of coal, import dependence is projected to increase as the growth of thermal generation will require coal supplies. It suggests the need to take steps to reduce energy intensity of production processes, increase domestic energy supply as quickly as possible, and ensure the rational energy pricing. Therefore, reduce the energy intensity of production process and enhance domestic energy supply. It draws attention to evolving a holistic water management policy, need of fair compensation to those whose land is acquired and whose livelihood is disrupted, universal health care, public investment and public-private partnerships, process of fiscal correction, efficient use of available resources in view of the resource constraints. 20-point program. It is the second central plan and was launched in July 1975. Intent of the program was to enable coordination and intensive monitoring of a number of schemes implemented by the both central and the state governments. The program was restructured in 1982 and in 1986.